What if the most unsettling aliens weren't the ones with tentacles or laser guns, but those who looked just like us? The 1950s, a decade when nuclear shadows loomed and anxiety ran deep, gave birth to cinema's most disturbing extraterrestrial visitors. These weren't just monster movies, they were mirror reflections of America's deepest concerns, dressed in silver spacesuits and hidden behind suburban smiles. The aliens that stalked across silver screens during the atomic age changed science fiction forever, leaving fingerprints on everything from Star Wars to Stranger Things. These 12 films didn't just frighten audiences, they rewired how we imagine our place in the cosmos. Before bug-eyed monsters became Hollywood's standard space invaders, Robert Wise introduced a visitor whose greatest weapon wasn't destruction, but calm. A gleaming flying saucer lands in Washington, D.C., and from it emerges Klaatu. Tall, composed, dressed in a silver suit, with his silent sentinel, Gort, towering beside him. The film's opening wasn't bombastic or violent. It was eerie precisely because of its restraint, a moment where the world seemed to hold its breath. The 1951 audience watching this was living under Hiroshima's shadow. Nuclear weapons had forever altered human history, and the Cold War was intensifying daily. Klaatu's message cut straight to humanity's core. Abandon violence, or Earth would be eliminated to protect the galactic community. What made Klaatu so profoundly disturbing wasn't monstrous features or evil intent, it was his perfect rationality. If such advanced beings saw humans as dangerous children playing with matches, what hope did we have? And then there was Gort, faceless and armed with a beam that could vaporize anything. To many viewers, he symbolized the atomic bomb itself, silent until provoked, unstoppable once unleashed. The phrase Klaatu Barada Nikto became more than famous dialogue. It represented the thin line between peace and annihilation. The film's ending offered no comforting resolution or heroic triumph, just Klaatu's parting warning. The decision rests with you. As audiences filed out of theaters, many surely looked to the night sky differently, not as a frontier to conquer, but as a court where humanity stood trial. If the day the Earth stood still delivered a sermon, the thing from another world unleashed a nightmare. Released the same year, it transported viewers to a remote Arctic research station where scientists and military personnel discover a spacecraft buried in ice. What emerges isn't a messenger but a predator, a creature feeding on blood and reproducing at terrifying speed. The horror stemmed not just from the monster itself, but from the paranoia it triggered among the isolated humans. Cut off from civilization, the men argue fiercely, should they study it as scientists, destroy it as soldiers, or worry it has already infiltrated their ranks? Film historian David J. Skal described it as the first Cold War monster, its icy origins and ruthless nature reflecting fears of an inhuman enemy creeping toward American shores. The film's tagline became a cultural mantra, "Keep watching the skies." This phrase captured both the wonder and dread of the space age dawning around viewers. Though the creature itself drew some criticism for looking more lumbering than terrifying, the film's claustrophobic tension carried it through. The Arctic setting became the perfect metaphor for isolation, suspicion, and survival against impossible odds. 3 decades later, John Carpenter would reimagine it as The Thing, 1982, transforming suspicion into grotesque body horror. Yet the DNA of Carpenter's masterpiece was born here, in the stark shadows of the original, where the day the Earth stood still asked humanity to change. The Thing warned us of forces we couldn't control, twin perspectives that defined the atomic era. 2 years later, alien suspicion crept closer to home. Invaders from Mars unfolds through the eyes of a child, David McLean, who wakes one night to witness a saucer descend behind his house. What follows became one of the first films to merge alien invasion with American suburban life, disturbing precisely because it looked so ordinary. Soon, David's parents, neighbors, and local police begin acting strangely. They appear identical on the outside, but become cold, distant, controlled. Audiences immediately grasp the metaphor. During the Red Scare, anyone could be an infiltrator, a traitor, a threat. Not even family was safe from suspicion. Critics noted the film's dreamlike quality, with sets designed to be stark and surreal. Endless sand pits and oddly angled fences created a landscape that echoed the unease of a child's distorted perspective. The Los Angeles Examiner called it a nightmare dressed in daylight, capturing how the film placed horror not in darkness but in sunny neighborhoods where aliens quietly took control. The ending shocked viewers by revealing everything as possibly a dream or perhaps a premonition. Either interpretation offered no comfort, only lingering doubt. In later decades, directors from Tobe Hooper to the creators of Stranger Things would borrow its central insight. Children see the truth first, while adults remain blind to the danger until it's too late. Invaders from Mars cemented the idea that alien horror could emerge not from distant stars, but from the house next door. By 1953, audiences were growing familiar with flying saucers darting across skies. But it came from outer space offered something different. Aliens who weren't necessarily malevolent, yet whose very presence terrified. Directed by Jack Arnold and based on a story by sci-fi luminary Ray Bradbury, the film follows an amateur astronomer who witnesses a spacecraft crash in the Arizona desert. When he investigates, he encounters strange beings, shimmering, formless creatures who only wish to repair their ship and depart. Yet, in their attempts to remain hidden, they temporarily replace townspeople, creating uncanny doppelgangers that move through the community. Shot in then-revolutionary 3D, the film startled viewers with meteors seemingly flying off the screen. But its deeper unease came from its moral ambiguity. Were these beings invaders or simply visitors? Misunderstood wanderers or advanced scouts? In the tense Cold War atmosphere, such questions felt dangerous to contemplate. The desert setting amplified the sense of alienation. Endless dunes, stark horizons, and lonely highways suggesting Earth itself was vulnerable and exposed beneath the stars. Though not as flashy as War of the Worlds or as grotesque as later monster movies, this film planted a vital conceptual seed. Sometimes we are the aggressors, not the aliens. This perspective would later influence works from Close Encounters of the Third Kind to Arrival, shifting the central question from how do we destroy them to how do we understand them? As the credits rolled, viewers were left in an unsettling middle ground. The creatures had departed, but the possibility of return lingered like heat on desert sand. That same year delivered a vision of extraterrestrial contact filled with fire, destruction, and apocalypse. War of the Worlds, produced by George Pal and directed by Byron Haskin, adapted H.G. Wells' 1898 novel into a Cold War spectacle. Victorian England was replaced by small-town America, bringing the invasion home to contemporary viewers. Strange meteor-like objects crashed to Earth, from which emerged Martian war machines, sleek, manta ray-shaped crafts hovering on invisible beams. Their heat rays reduce everything to ash. Their force fields render human weapons useless. For audiences still practicing duck-and-cover drills and watching tensions rise in Korea, the imagery was devastating. Civilization's defenses from tanks to atomic bombs crumbled in minutes before an enemy that was merciless and seemingly unstoppable. The Academy Award-winning special effects made this tension feel visceral. Vibrant Technicolor flames consumed familiar landmarks. Death rays sliced through cities with shocking precision. Critics called it the most alarming spectacle yet seen on screen. Beneath the pyrotechnics lay clear allegory. The Martians represented the ultimate adversary, faceless, relentless, and absolutely destructive. The film's climax echoed Wells' original twist. The invaders are ultimately defeated not by human heroism, but by microbes, bacteria to which they have no immunity. To some viewers, this seemed anticlimactic. To others, it carried profound meaning, suggesting that despite atomic arsenals and military might, nature itself remained Earth's most powerful defender. One headline read, "Even invaders cannot escape God's plan." The movie concludes in a church where survivors pray as alien machines begin to fall. In the 1950s America, this fusion of faith and science fiction resonated deeply. War of the Worlds established visual tropes that would define alien invasion narratives for generations. Saucers hovering over cities, feudal military stands, and desperate human survivors watching civilization crumble around them. Not all aliens came from the stars. Sometimes the invaders were of our own making. In Them, released in 1954, the threat emerges from atomic testing in the New Mexico desert. Radiation spawns something unthinkable. Ants grown to truck size with crushing mandibles and alien-like shrieks. Unlike humanoid visitors or flying saucers, Them tapped into different anxieties. That science itself could unleash horrors beyond control. For audiences just 9 years after Hiroshima, the message was unmistakable. Tampering with nature through nuclear power could create monsters from the familiar. The film follows scientists and military personnel hunting the creatures from desert landscapes to urban sewers. Shot in stark black and white, its sound design amplified the discomfort. The eerie insect screeches echoing through tunnels left audiences gripping their seats. The Los Angeles Times dubbed it the first atomic monster film with true intensity, and its success launched a wave of radiation-spawned creatures from giant spiders to enormous crabs. Beyond spectacle, Them introduced a procedural approach, scientists, military, and government agencies working methodically together that would shape decades of sci-fi response narratives. Its climactic sequence beneath Los Angeles prefigured urban creature encounters in films like Aliens and countless modern features. Perhaps most unsettling was its plausibility. Radiation remained invisible, mysterious, and poorly understood by the public. If atomic energy could transform cities in seconds, why couldn't it alter nature in unexpected ways? The final narration lingers with thoughtful weight. When man entered the atomic age, he opened a door into a new world. What we'll eventually find in that new world, nobody can predict. If most alien films of the early 50s were shot in black and white, This Island Earth burst onto screens in bold Technicolor. Released in 1955, it told an expansive story stretching from quiet American laboratories to the distant reaches of interstellar conflict. The narrative begins when scientist Cal Meacham receives mysterious electronic components in the mail, parts so advanced they seem impossible. He assembles them into a communication device called an interocitor that connects him with beings from another world. Soon, he's recruited into a secret project led by Exeter, a soft-spoken alien with an enlarged forehead who appears mostly human. Initially, Exeter seems benevolent, but as Cal learns more, he realizes these aliens are desperate. Their planet Metaluna is dying from relentless attack, and they need Earth's uranium and scientific minds. When Cal and fellow scientist Ruth are taken to Metaluna itself, they encounter the film's most famous creation, the mutant. With its bulging brain, insect-like features, and clawed hands, the Metalunan mutant became one of the decade's most iconic monsters. Though the effects were occasionally criticized as theatrical, the film's ambition stood apart. It was among the first to depict interstellar travel and alien civilizations in vivid color, pioneering visual concepts that would influence Star Trek and later space epics. For teenagers who experienced it at drive-ins, the sight of Earth scientists swept into cosmic conflict left an indelible impression. Film historian Bill Warren observed, "This Island Earth was the first time audiences truly saw that our world was just one of many, fragile in the vastness of space." Even amid its melodrama, the film captured a sobering truth. Humanity might not be conquerors among the stars, but participants in conflicts beyond our comprehension. When Exeter sacrifices himself to save the humans, viewers witnessed something rare, an alien who desired peace, trapped in a situation too vast to escape. No film captured the paranoia of the 1950s more perfectly than Don Siegel's Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Released in 1956, it transformed the creeping fear of infiltration into physical reality through alien pod people. The story follows Dr. Miles Bennell in the small town of Santa Mira, where residents begin claiming their loved ones are not themselves, identical in appearance, but somehow different. Miles soon discovers the horrifying truth. Alien seed pods are systematically replacing humans with perfect duplicates, physically identical, but devoid of emotion or individuality. The imagery was deeply disturbing. Giant pods splitting open to reveal half-formed human faces, lifeless and empty, waiting to replace someone while they sleep. Audiences recoiled at the suggestion that one's spouse, neighbor, or child could be an imposter with unknown purposes. The allegory resonated immediately in multiple directions. During the political tensions of the era, where conformity was demanded and individuality suspect, the pod people could represent either foreign infiltration or, ironically, the pressures of American society itself, where standing apart invited danger. The Saturday Review called it a chilling fable of identity lost that spoke to the anxieties of a nation in transition. The film's original ending, with Miles shouting, "They're here already! You're next!" while cars pass him by, stands among cinema's most disturbing conclusions. The shot of him desperately warning oblivious motorists captured the essence of growing isolation, seeing trouble that others ignore until too late. Invasion of the Body Snatchers spawned multiple remakes, each reflecting the tensions of its own era, from Watergate-era government distrust to post-9/11 security concerns. The concept of alien doppelgangers became a staple across science fiction, influencing everything from The X-Files to Stranger Things. What made it timeless wasn't elaborate effects or intensity, but its emotional core. The unnerving experience of looking into familiar eyes and seeing nothing human behind them. If you've ever visualized a flying saucer hovering over the White House, you can thank Earth versus the Flying Saucers. Released in 1956, this film visually defined the alien invasion narrative for generations to come. The plot follows Dr. Russell Marvin, who discovers that a fleet of alien spacecraft has arrived with ultimatums for Earth. When diplomacy fails, conflict erupts, saucer after saucer descending over major cities, unleashing devastation. What distinguished this film was the groundbreaking special effects work of Ray Harryhausen. Using stop-motion animation, he created saucers that tilted, spun, and crashed into landmarks with unprecedented realism. Audiences gasped as the Washington Monument toppled and the Capitol building crumbled. Imagery so iconic that films like Independence Day would deliberately reference it decades later. Contemporary reviews praised the spectacle, with the New York Herald Tribune declaring, "Never before have flying saucers looked so alarmingly real." Beyond pure entertainment, the film channeled Cold War tensions through its alien invaders, who demanded Earth's surrender and subjugation. The sight of familiar American symbols reduced to rubble played directly into nuclear concerns that touched every household. Though categorized among BEM, bug-eyed monster movies, Earth versus the Flying Saucers cast a long shadow over popular culture. Its saucer design, gleaming discs with rotating edges, became the standard visual shorthand for UFOs, influencing everything from government reports to children's toys. The film's imagery became so embedded in the public consciousness that it began blurring the line between science fiction and UFO folklore. In the climax, humans triumph by turning the aliens' own technology against them. But the film closes on a reflective note, with scientists cautioning that Earth must remain vigilant and united against future threats from beyond. For audiences of 1956, it wasn't just spectacle. It was the first time many truly imagined the skies above filled with imminent challenge. By 1956, alien narratives had evolved from small-town paranoia into ambitious space epics. Forbidden Planet, directed by Fred M. Wilcox, represented a quantum leap forward. Lush Technicolor visuals, widescreen cinemascope, and production values rivaling Hollywood's grandest offerings. Set in the 23rd century, it follows Commander Adams and his crew as they investigate the fate of an earlier expedition to Altair 4. There they encounter only two survivors, Dr. Morbius and his daughter Altera, who have tapped into the vast technologies of a vanished alien race called the Krell. These technologies are so advanced they can materialize thoughts into reality. Though not structured as a conventional horror film, its creepiest element emerges in the monster from the id, an invisible creature created from Morbius's subconscious, fueled by Krell machines that rampages across the planet, destroying equipment and killing crewmen. That the mysterious entity came not from outer space, but from within the human mind, made it profoundly unsettling. The film also introduced Robbie the Robot, whose precise logic and calm voice influenced decades of artificial intelligence portrayals. Critics recognized Forbidden Planet as groundbreaking, with Time magazine calling it a gorgeous new dream of space, and others noting its Shakespearean undertones. The story broadly reimagines The Tempest. Its cultural footprint became enormous. Gene Roddenberry cited it as direct inspiration for Star Trek. George Lucas borrowed elements for Star Wars, and countless space narratives adopted its balance of wonder and warning. The film's closing message, "We are, after all, not God," encapsulated its central caution. Even as humanity reached for the stars, its greatest dangers would come from within. As the decade neared its end, two wildly different alien films would secure their place in cinema history. The Blob, released in 1958, told the story of a small Pennsylvania town terrorized by an amorphous alien mass that grows with each victim it consumes. Unlike any previous screen alien, the Blob was terrifying in its simplicity. No face, no motive, no communication. It was pure consumption, oozing under doors, seeping through cracks, engulfing anything in its path. The film broke ground by centering teenagers as its heroes, with a young Steve McQueen in his first starring role, playing the rebel who discovers the threat while adults dismiss his warnings. The movie's most memorable sequence shows the Blob invading a movie theater, sending screaming audiences into the streets, creating a meta moment for viewers watching in their own theaters as fiction and reality seem to blur. Culturally, The Blob perfectly encapsulated post-war concerns about unstoppable change. It spread silently, engulfing individuals until nothing remained, a fitting metaphor for worries about foreign influence and the homogenizing effects of mass culture. The film endured as a cult classic, inspiring remakes and even an annual festival in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, where the theater scene was filmed. The decade closed with perhaps the most notorious alien film ever made, Plan 9 from Outer Space. Directed by Ed Wood on a minuscule budget, it told a bizarre tale of aliens resurrecting Earth's dead to prevent humanity from developing a doomsday weapon. The result featured wobbly cardboard sets, visible strings on flying saucers, and dialogue so awkward it became unintentionally hilarious. Yet the film carried strange power through its very ineptitude. Horror icon Bela Lugosi appears in his final role, though he died during production, forcing Wood to use random footage and a stand-in holding a cape over his face, creating a disjointed, ghostly quality. Despite, or because of, its technical failings, Plan 9 gained legendary status, celebrated at midnight screenings, and immortalized in Tim Burton's Ed Wood, 1994. What connected these disparate films? Both introduced concepts that would echo through decades of science fiction. The Blob's mindless consumption, foreshadowing environmental concerns, Plan 9's aliens manipulating the deceased, prefiguring countless sci-fi/horror crossovers. One achieved its effects through technical skill, the other through passionate incompetence, yet both remained burned into cultural memory. These 12 films from the 1950s did more than frighten audiences in darkened theaters. They permanently altered how we imagine extraterrestrial contact. Their DNA lives on in everything from blockbuster alien invasions to prestige science fiction television. The questions they raised remain startlingly relevant. Would aliens come as destroyers or saviors? Would we recognize them if they walked among us? And perhaps most disturbing, would we recognize ourselves if we became like them? The Cold War tensions that birthed these films have transformed, but their unease resonates with contemporary concerns: surveillance, climate challenges, technological overreach, and the fragility of truth itself. When we watch modern alien narratives, we're seeing reflections of these pioneering visions, updated for new anxieties but carrying the same existential questions. These weren't just monster movies, they were America, processing its greatest worries through the safe distance of celluloid. In their eerie glow, audiences confronted what it meant to be human in an age where humanity itself seemed suddenly precarious. What's your favorite creepy alien film from this era? Drop a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe for more journeys through cinema's most influential moments.